Truly, at some point, you've been the poor schmuck who gets stuck in the middle of all the Christmas gifts on Christmas morning, and it's your job to sort through all of these things and put together the rotation and make sure that the right presents are going to the right people. It seems like it'd be simple, but it's kind of stressful and detracting, and Christmas is my birthday, so I shouldn't have to do that, but I always end up doing it. I don't know what my problem is. But Matthew chapter 10 has me feeling a lot the same way with the same pressures. We have this difficult little paragraph at the end of the missional discourse where it sounds like there's a whole bunch of presents being given out, rewards that is, and they're being given to different people. And it's hard to know exactly who these are supposed to go to. And I feel like before we move on to chapter 11, we need to sort out who gets what reward here at the end of Matthew 10, because it seems rather important. So Matthew 10, verse 40, we've just heard a whole bunch of stuff about Jesus saying that he's sending the disciples out into the big open world quest to go and represent the kingdom and tell people about him. They're going out with a message. The message is the kingdom of heaven is near, and they are equipped to heal the sick, listen closely to this list, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, and drive out demons. There's nothing else on the list. Those are the things that they get to do supernaturally that illustrate the authority of the message in case people just don't take it on the merits of the message or on the merits of what Jesus has done. So there's all this up and down language about, hey, it's going to be tough. You're probably going to get flogged a little bit. That'll be okay. It's going to be hard to know what to say. Don't worry. I'll be there with you. You'll get the words that you need to know to say from my Father, from the Spirit of your Father. And there's going to be some division. This is going to be difficult, but there's these three layers of encouragement. And then we get to verse 40, and Jesus says, he who receives you, so presumably the disciples, I guess, receives me, and he who receives me receives the one who sent me. That's a pretty simple three-part statement. If you go out into the wild with the message of the kingdom and you tell people the kingdom of heaven is near, and they're like, I believe you, then they have not just received you who brought the message, but they have received me. I'm talking like Jesus now, because I'm the one who sent you out with the message, and I'm still talking like Jesus now. Further, they have by proxy received my Father, because my Father sent me, I sent you, and then you went to them and they received you. I think we're tracking with this concept of the bannermen being representatives of the king and the expectation being that they would be well received. But here's the part where it gets into the presence and the confusing stuff and the anxiety. Anyone who receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And anyone who receives a righteous man because he's a righteous man will receive a righteous man's reward. This really has a lilt to it. And if anyone even gives a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because he's my disciple, I tell you the truth, he will certainly not lose his reward. So reward occurs again and again and again. Everybody gets this generic idea of reward. We're trying to figure out if there's a difference between these rewards or if it's all the same rewards. It doesn't matter what present I give to which person. But then there are three very distinct categories. You've got category number one, which is the person who receives the prophet and the prophet. They apparently get the same reward. And then you've got the righteous man and the person who receives the righteous man. They apparently get the same reward. You get the person who gives a cup of cold water to one of the little ones because he is my disciple. So you've got the water cup giver and you have the little one who is the disciple. I think I've got that all right. And they get the same reward. So if all the rewards are interchangeable, then my job is very, very easy here as I sit in the middle of this interpretive circle of presents. Just everybody gets the same thing. And this time around, it's one of those multi-tools that you can get for $20 from sporting goods store that everybody likes and you can always give people when you don't know what to give them. It works for all different people and genders, and it's a great gift, and I highly recommend it at Christmas time if you don't know what to give people, because multi-tools are awesome. But if we read this passage and we're like, a prophet's reward is probably different from a righteous man's reward, then we got more work to do and things are more complicated. So let's just find out what we actually have going on. Okay, prophet. Does this mean a person who predicts stuff and then the stuff turns out to be right? Or does this mean a person who says things as an ambassador of someone who sent them out with the message? Well, at certain points in the Bible, certainly prophet means a person who hears something from God. And they're not allowed to get it wrong ever. Like if they get it wrong once, the stakes are very high and they get hit with rocks. I'm not saying we should actually do that, but you don't get to get prophecies wrong in the Bible. But you got prophets who live on that razor's edge throughout the scriptures, and they get a word from God that's about how things are going to be, and they say that thing, and if it turns out to be wrong, you got a problem. If it turns out to be right and you didn't listen, What the heck? God told you how the things were going to be. Like, the divine knower of all things gave you the thing that everybody wants, which is, what's going to happen? How's it going to turn out? And you didn't listen. So it's a very, again, high stakes kind of deal when you have a predictive prophet, and also a very measurable thing. You know whether or not they got it right. But there's another notion of prophet that I mentioned a second ago, and this is the one who just speaks the things that are true without necessarily being given some supernatural message from God that they need to deliver. Here, I think we got to be talking about the latter. And my reason for that is that if the trick that the disciples were going to use to go out into the wild on their big open world quest, if the thing they needed to take with them because it's dangerous to go alone was predictive prophecy, why wouldn't that be on the list that I just read you from the beginning of chapter 10? Remember, the list is heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Predict the future is not on there. So because predict the future isn't on that list, but the simple message of the kingdom of heaven is near, is on the list, I got to go with what the text is pointing to, and that is that the prophet here is simply a messenger, a bannerman, like we were talking about yesterday. Which, if we go with that, and if you don't agree with me, that's all right. Maybe just humor me for this line of reasoning to play itself all the way out. If we go with that, then to receive a prophet, as the text says, couldn't just mean to be nice to them when they show up. It can't just mean like, hey, I believe religious things and I'm here to tell you. And then the receiver of the prophet's like, that seems idiotic and stupid, but you can have some waffles with me or whatever, and I'll give you a glass of water and you can wash up. That's not enough. It must mean in some way that they receive the message as well. Now, I'm going to turn over my cards a little bit here. I don't do a lot of commentary work. I don't read a lot of resources for this, mostly because I want it to be organic. I want to do the work myself and bounce back and forth and try to remember things I remember from other texts. But when we get to hard passages, sometimes I go and look so that I just make sure I'm not saying stuff that nobody in the history of ever has ever thought before. And I got my mitts on a commentary I haven't looked at much yet. It's called the Concordia Commentary. Cool guy named Joe gave me this. And I was thumbing through this thing, and there's a great treatment of the original Greek language on verse 41 about the prophet and the prophet's reward thing. And it's above my pay grade. I can fumble through the Greek all right, but this is pretty smart stuff here. And this guy, Jeffrey Gibbs, who wrote this particular commentary, is arguing that implicit in the original language and to the original hearers, it would have been obvious that to receive the prophet means not just to be hospitable or basically tolerant, but to receive the message they were bringing forward as well, which I think also squares with the context rationally that we're looking at here. So here's what I think we got going on. If one of these prophets shows up, and they're not predicting the future, but they're just saying, like, hey, the kingdom of heaven is near. This is a big deal. You might want to sign up. It's really great. I heard about all of these different values and virtues that it has. You're going to love it. You should be a part of this. You do that by bending the knee to the king. And somebody's like, I've been looking for the king. I've been looking for the kingdom. Those are the values I want. Those are the values we were all built for. I'm in. I bend the knee to this king. That is what it would look like to receive a prophet. And then what is the prophet's reward? Well, I mean, what's the reward for all of this business? Jesus says it is participation in the kingdom. Now, that means a lot of things, and it probably expands out into more stuff than we have time to talk about here. But throughout all of the teachings of Jesus in the book of Matthew that we've seen so far, the reward is the forgiveness of sins, which makes it possible to be in this perfect, beautiful kingdom that otherwise you could never earn your way into. That is the reward. And I think that's the prophet's reward. The person who goes out with the message already has it, and they're being a faithful representative of the kingdom. The person who receives the message from the prophet likewise receives the same exact reward that the messenger in the first place had. I think it's got to be the same thing for righteous man and the one who receives a righteous man as well. And further, I think it's got to be the same thing for the one who gives a cup of cold water to the kid because he's the disciple. And based on what we've heard from Jesus, as I look at this mountain of gifts around me and try to figure out where they go, more and more I'm convinced that I can just start handing these out to anybody who's invited to the Christmas party, because I don't think the prophet is different from the righteous man, and I don't think the righteous man is different from the disciple. The disciple is a messenger. You can't be, according to what Jesus said, a disciple or a righteous man without also being a representative of the kingdom who has the message that the kingdom of heaven is near. So to be a little one who is a disciple is to be one on whom the righteousness of Jesus rests is to be one who is an agent and an ambassador of the king, or in this case, the language we're using is prophet. There's some people, and I don't know, maybe they have a point. I don't find it compelling at all, who think we're talking about three different things here and that there's some code here that you can take the power of the words of the Bible and bounce them back to God and be like, I did prophetic things, I get my prophet's reward, and that it's all different. I just don't see it supported biblically at all. I don't see it supported contextually at all. I think it gets into some of the kind of health, wealth, mysticism, transactional Christianity that you see on TV, and in some of the fringer expressions of Christianity that I just have to be honest and disclose with you when they come up. Those don't resonate with me. They don't check out against the text. Could I be wrong? Oh, heck yeah, I could be wrong. I've been wrong about so much stuff so many times. I have made my case for what I think this text is talking about. I think ultimately what we're looking at here is an ebbing and flowing all the way through Matthew chapter 10 of this is going to be awesome and it's going to be really hard and it's going to be awesome and it's going to be really hard and you're going to freak out, but I'm right there with you, and you're going to panic even more, but I got this thing. You are my bannerman. You are on mission. It's going to hurt, but it's worth it. That ebb and flow seems to be the pattern that takes us through the whole thing. It starts with a positive commissioning. It ends with the positive language of reward, and we will break all of that stuff down a little more tomorrow. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do it again soon.